Cancel culture is seen throughout history, and it's a safety mechanism. We still have that inside of us, even though it's poorly used. So if we recognize it and are aware of it, then we can actually shape our behavior around our flaws. I'd also say with everything being online, we are really quick to make opinions. We feel as if we have to have an opinion. We have to be the most knowledgeable in the room. And so that can formulate a lot of mistrust and this perception of perfection.
It's very easy to vilify companies, but companies are people. People are companies. And ultimately, this is a very human challenge.
When we villainize those that don't see themselves as a villain, whether they are or not, you've now pushed them away and now they're your adversary. And that is super frustrating, but it's the reality of how humans react. This has been really a tough journey for me, to be honest, because I'm not naturally like this. I am pissed, but it just doesn't work. I'd rather live in the world we experience today, which is beautiful and exciting, and I want to support that. And so that's why I do that, but it is burdensome.
You so want to do that, don't you?
I want to be on the morning show with Reese Witherspoon and Jennifer Aniston.
Jenny, welcome to whatever production studio this is, our fantasy of the morning show. And
at the moment,
you have to get all more We Too and Me Too and They Too.
I can't get much more Me Too than...
That's true. Can
you? No. You don't want me to go more in that way. No, I had enough of my own Me Too stories to deal with. So
as you noticed, I'm gently cupping my testicles.
That was a good decision.
Just to make sure that it's all, everything down there is covered.
Oh,
which is a good segue in terms of trigger responses, maybe. Inadvertently, don't know how we got there, into climate.
Yes.
And more directly, maybe cancel culturing climate. And Jenny, it's really cool to have you on the show, actually, because up until we met and we chatted about it, I didn't even know that this point of view existed. Obviously, we're kind of aware of it out there in the world, and there's a lot of naysaying and a lot of politicization of obviously climate and climate change. But I was really fascinated, I think we all were, Paloma and Heidi and myself, were really fascinated about how you've kind of joined that that objection to cancel culture in general, and how that's maybe either inhibiting how we feel and think about climate. And I know you have some points of view over how we can maybe kind of get over that hump.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times people think about cancel culture when it comes to the Me Too movement, like we briefly touched on, and then also in politics. But in climate action, it's definitely one that causes a lot of delays. That's not a luxury that we have to play with right now. So that's why I wanted to write the book and get people on the same page so that we can start progressing forward as a society. I was working at Microsoft and leading a team that was focused on bringing and highlighting equity into the Microsoft ecosystem. We had done a really cool initiative for COP, which happened as we were emerging out of the pandemic. I ended up writing a blog post about it. It was approved, and we had just worked so tirelessly on making that come to life. And then because there was so much backlash from that event, we didn't end up allowing for the blog to be published. And that to me really made me want to think more about how can we talk about pretty good? You know, like what is pretty good? When can pretty good be acceptable? When can positive efforts be something that is actually celebrated versus villainized? And then there had been just such catastrophic wildfires that were happening in the region where I live, and the air quality was so poor. My daughter has health concerns that, you know, if air quality is poor, it can be very catastrophic for our family. And so I just was feeling a lot of pressure to get it right.
Yeah, I find it really frustrating on our clients' behalf in a lot of ways, because it's a journey. It's not something that can happen overnight. Let's say those that are maybe a little bit more naive about sustainability, they think it's just, well, just take plastic out. What's your problem? You know, but we know that it's actually much more involved than just hitting some switch. So therefore, if brands or businesses don't feel like they have it perfect to 100%, then they trip over themselves. But yeah, that pretty good part is a real pain point.
Where's that need for perfection come from?
So I think it's multifaceted. I think it comes down to being human. I don't think we like negative attention. We also don't like really long tasks that don't have milestones that we can see and tangibly experience. So I think it's just the way that humans are. We do a lot better when the urgency is right at our doorstep. We're experiencing it. But then unfortunately, in regards to climate change, that means we're running out of time. And so to, get everyone involved, it's kind of like we have to have people experience the bottom or some version of it. And then that actually inspires. I'd also say with everything being online, we are really quick to make opinions. We feel as if we have to have an opinion. We have to be the most knowledgeable in the room. And so that can formulate a lot of mistrust and this perception of perfection. And so I think it's a lot of different things, but the world that we live in right now is definitely very demanding about being perfect.
I often think about in climate this notion of projection bias, where you're always kind of looking forward and you're projecting your future state on your present self. And using your future self as the justification for whether or not you do something now. Classic example, right? Going to the gym. I know I'm not going to go to the gym today. I'll go in 2 days' time when I'm feeling it a bit, I don't have a headache and I'm feeling less tired. And of course, that results in inactivity and status quo. So I just wonder then, kind of applying that thinking to the climate movement and the ability to kind of set your net zero targets for 2030, 2040, whatever it might be. Are we just giving companies an easy out? Are we just giving them another crutch on which to kind of reinforce projection bias, which means they can literally kick the can down the road and agree a target, but without actually having to do anything about it now? Is that true, or is that a bit of an unfair generalization, do you think?
I think it's both. We saw how many companies committed to a 2030 or 2040 or 2050 net zero target, and then how many weren't publicly reporting. I think it was intended because it will take a while to get everything to that point. We needed to provide the time to be able to implement all of these changes and actions. And there's some companies that bit off a bit more than they can chew, and they didn't understand the gravity of what the claim and commitment was. And then some that really embraced it, and whether they're going to meet their target or not, at least they're moving quickly and really being intentional.
I remember listening to your podcast. I think it was with Ryan at Lift Partners. And you talked about the fact, well, it's very easy to vilify companies, but companies are just companies are people. People are companies. And ultimately, this is a very human challenge, right? In the way that we think, in the way that we engage with each other, in the way that we're expected to behave or to be seen to behave. And really, if you kind of look at climate just through the lens of fallibility of being human, then maybe there are some answers in that, or maybe there's some ways in which we can kind of think about climate or how we kind of manage that narrative through into much more positive progress if we're just more human about it.
Yeah, that's actually why I push back in the most empathetic way, but I push back against the angry activist persona. They're typically attacking a brand, and that allows for the individuals within that brand, which are making all the decisions and actually pushing decisions forward. When you attack a brand, that actually does the opposite of what's being intended. And now there's a community inside said brand that feel defensive on their own behalf. And so now they're going to double down on whatever the criticism may be, because they themselves understand how that problem came about. And so it creates this divide, and there isn't any humanity in it. If you actually take the opposite approach and explore with curiosity what the problems are, what are the challenges, what are the obstacles, because everyone would want to be a climate hero. There's no one out in the world, even the biggest polluters out there, would love to be able to make the same amount of money and ensure that their business and their planet will continue on turning as expected. And so if you come to a conversation with curiosity and actually asking what the problems are and coming from a collaborative mindset, it unlocks so many opportunities and actually gets everybody on the same team, whereas the first version isolates and separates.
It's almost like the extremes have become like climate psychos.
It's about proving how smart they are by how they attack.
Right, exactly. Really, it's logic, it's rational, it's indifferent, it's no empathy, it's just pure
ego.
In their defense, I think they feel like their passion, the level of passion that they show will create the solution. And it just unfortunately doesn't work that way. It just doesn't inspire. And so for me, I need to use my time in the most effective way. And I've learned that shouting and stomping isn't going to move things forward. So therefore, I'm going to choose an alternative route.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. We often talk about wanting to look at sustainability with a level of forgiveness. Just because we don't have it all figured out. There's no one pill to solve all these things. You talked about technology lags. There's all kinds of things we're solving for at the same time. So we need to look at that evolution with a bit of forgiveness. That there's going to be trips and stumbles along a new path.
For sure. Just like life. Same deal, right?
Forgiveness was something you mentioned, Jenny, in your book. Just like in life, forgiveness is also important for us. Like once we can forgive others, and we can kind of relieve the weight of that and guilt that tends to really bring us down. And
the first edition of the book was very much so about unlocking and exploring your own trauma that's then creating your decision making. And then I had to make edits because you would have closed it and been like, you know what? I am going to get a therapist. I would have loved that. Like, I would have been like, yes. But then I really needed people to close the book and say, you know what? I'm going to figure out why marketing and sustainability can't get along, or the left and the right feel like they have opposing opinions about climate action. I needed that to be the end result. And so I had to pick. But I do think it has so much to do with exploring where our own shame and frustration comes from, because then that's going to give you the tools you need to actually have an effective conversation with someone else.
So where's this cancel culture in climate coming from? So, you've written about it, you've thought a lot about it, and, obviously your professional journey has given you lots of reference points for it. What's going on? Where is it coming from and why is it happening?
I mean, I think money is always something that comes up. I also think there's this political aspect that is, especially in the United States, that has evolved where there's this tribalism that's come forward, where if you are a liberal, you're, walking barefoot outside and hugging trees and
composting.
Yeah. And you're just like living in a tent. And then if you're a conservative, you have your own oil and gas well in your backyard, and like you just throw your milk carton out the window. There are like stereotypes of who we are, when in actuality, again, we're all very similar. It's just we've lost time and interest in exploring what that actually means. How do you actually stop thinking that and then dig a bit deeper to find out who this person actually is, what makes them tick?
Yeah, we've been talking a lot about this lack of ability to hold two truths at the same time. You can be both of these things.
Yeah.
You can be a composter and a Republican, potentially.
Yes.
Shockingly.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, middle path is something that I struggle with every single day.
It is hard to counterbalance. It is hard to hold two opposing viewpoints in your mind at the same time and then exert some mental energy to determine how to move forward. We're preconditioned to choose the easiest route, reduce our cognitive load and take the most convenient solution. Is there something in this as well that, conversations around climate are hard? They feel exclusionary. You either feel that you know a lot about it or you're a complete idiot, and therefore you don't have a right to talk about it at all. Where I would imagine most people feel somewhere in the middle, where they have a kind of vague understanding maybe of some of the kind of larger global effects. They aren't yet able to kind of necessarily attach it directly to their own lived experience, but there's something inside intuitively that's saying, well, this is something I should probably start to think about or consider. I just don't really know what to do.
I think the movement, and this might be biased because I'm very much so inside it, I think the movement tries to be very inclusive. I think what causes the movement to feel exclusive is when we shame those that are at that stage. Let's accept that everyone is on a different stage of the journey, and let's make sure that there are resources for every single step and that the door is open for anyone that wants to keep walking through those steps.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's like an immense pressure to know everything about every single topic in climate when you're in the space, like knowing that it's so niche and every industry has its own set of problems and supply chain complications. And it's funny when you're supposed to be talking to someone who isn't in that work and they just assume you know everything about everything that you need to know. And it's a lot of expectation, I feel like, on folks to be experts in everything.
Yeah. You really need to pick your battles when you're having a conversation when you've identified that they're in a different stage than you. So you need to know, what is the end result that I want from this conversation? And if the end result is you want them to think about sustainability the next time they do anything, it needs to be something that's fun and positive and not shame-based.
What about climate justice? Because again, thinking about some of these forces and just putting those two words together is quite triggering for many, isn't it? I mean, I remember when I first was introduced to the concept and I was like, okay, climate justice. Okay, what? And then it's okay. So it's really all about, climate externalities having a disproportionately negative effect on, members of society who are either underprivileged or don't have the resources or even the influence or necessarily the representation to be able to, kind of push back. I just didn't know what to do with it, frankly. And I just wonder whether, again, when you kind of bring it back to climate, sometimes it's the language we choose, isn't it? Sometimes it's the way that we express things can have a very triggering effect on people if it's used out of context.
People don't like to feel like they are the bad guy if they don't feel like they did anything wrong. This is a prime example of like why what I'm promoting in my book is hard, because I believe in climate justice. I also acknowledge that I'm very privileged in where I sit, but that doesn't mean that I can't point at the reality of the world we live in and try to put positive influence for those that are often pushed out of this movement, and also try to figure out how we can uplift our entire society together. And when we villainize those that don't see themselves as a villain, whether they are or not, you've now pushed them away and now they're your adversary. And that is super frustrating, but it's the reality of how humans react. And so I want to operate in a way that is realistic, even if it's not the perfect way to talk about it or the right thing to do.
Yeah, it's a kind of bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? I've heard this particularly, in BIPOC communities where if a culturally or ethnically related factor about their identity is highlighted as a reason for why they should be treated differently, it creates a double jeopardy effect. Basically, is that then just becomes another reason for people not to, causes another level of ostracism and unfair representation. It's so unfair and it's just so ridiculous. But to your point, I guess it's how we're wired to think, right? It's how we are. We're tribal.
Even cancel culture is seen throughout history, and it's a safety mechanism. And so we still have that inside of us, even though it's poorly used. So if we recognize it and are aware of it, then we can actually shape our behavior around our flaws. I think it's really hard when people don't take accountability. So I can recognize differences, but when people shrug and say like, well, I voted this way, but like, I just want to go to Thanksgiving and like eat my favorite stuffing. That to me is passing the buck and not taking accountability for what's actually happening. I usually have to kind of step away and do a breathing exercise and then come back and try to reinvigorate empathy and curiosity again. This has been really a tough journey for me, to be honest, because I'm not naturally like this. I am pissed and I don't like a lot of people, but it just doesn't work. I'd rather live in the world we experience today, which is beautiful and exciting. And I want to support that. And so that's why I do that. But it is burdensome. Ask yourself, what is this person afraid of? And what are they trying to avoid? Like, why are they not taking accountability? What's at risk for them? Or what do they at least think is at risk? And so if you start to just kind of view it as a puzzle, it can help a little bit.
Can have a little bit of detachment rather than just like, why don't you see this the way I see this?
Yeah. And I like the accountability. That's a really interesting lens, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because you could argue that most businesses are highly accountable. In fact, they're super accountable, which is maybe why we see so much kind of green hushing now, is that there's a fear of, well, I can't be accountable this for whatever way, shape or form that we want to be. So that we're just going to put it down and walk away from it rather than try and be accountable for something that we know we can't manage or we think we can't manage or we can't control.
Well, as soon as you're accountable, you have a stake in the game.
Right.
Right. And so I think from a people perspective, because I'm with Jenny on this, I have a very heightened sense of accountability.
Yeah.
So when people are not accountable, I'm like, what the heck's wrong with, I just don't, it triggers me. But it's because they don't necessarily want to have the sense of attachment to those things. And I just assume the attachment. Like, I don't know why you'd question it. Of course, let's go do this. We can do it, so let's just go do it. But there's a level of attachment that people don't want to have, either afraid of judgment, all the things. And once they have to assume that attachment, it changes the game.
I really appreciated from your book, Jenny, around, because it's something that I try to lead with, right? One's willingness, an individual willingness, actually does reinforce the actions of others.
Yeah. And I mean, it goes to like the holding two truths at the same time. You have positive influence on what happens in the world. And you also can't put all of the negative things happening in the world on your own shoulders. And so that's that middle path struggle where sometimes I really have a hard time with that, where I'm like, I'm just going to save the planet by myself and I know what I'm doing tonight. And then I wake up the next day and I'm like, I didn't do it. And then I feel like I failed. But then you also can inspire masses of people, and people watch you. They feel your energy. If it's positive and fun, they want to do it too.
I was just going to mention the affirmation that you included, which really encapsulates pretty much the entire conversation we're having. I choose empathy and solidarity over despair and apathy.
I think it ultimately comes down to what the end goal is. And often when we're trying to find solidarity, we start at that. But I think it's actually the opposite. We need to agree what our end goal is and work backwards from there. But then we get hung up on a detail or some sort of disagreement, and then we don't move forward anymore. I think you can have bipartisan groups or, religious, as long as we just all agree on the goal we want and make it really simplistic so that if any disagreements come up or challenges come up, just go back to the goal. The ultimate goal is that we all get funding to do the work that's required to stop this catastrophe from continuing. Full stop.
Do you have anything that you'd like to ask Gaia or AI in relation to cancel culture and climate?
Yeah, I would ask, what would help people feel seen in the climate movement? And then you could also ask Gaia who they would cancel.
To answer the first question, Gaia believes that people feel seen in the climate movement when the conversation isn't just about policies or big picture trends, but it's also about the personal, messy ways that individuals are engaging with and impacted by sustainability issues.
What people love, it works.
And then asking about, in the context of cancel culture, who would you cancel? Let's see what she comes back with. For me, as someone working in the sustainability space, fostering genuine dialogue and growth is key. It's a very Miss America or Miss Universe answer.
All right, well done, Gaia. Good work. If you wanted to kind of leave listeners or viewers with one thing to take away from this, what would it be?
Yeah, I would come to every future conversation with yourself and with others with curiosity. So if you feel an emotion or if someone is expressing a fact or an opinion that they feel strongly about, ask a question first before you make another statement and try to figure out how to work more as a team. And that might be with your neighbor, that might be with, you're a sustainability professional and the marketing team is having a tough time translating your work, or you're always struggling with finance, approving your efforts. Try to figure out what's causing the disconnect and be a connector and work on that. And then step away when you don't have the bandwidth or the mental space to do that. And that's great too.
Yeah.
Really? No, I should.
Now I'm going to go step away and get a brownie.
Yeah. I've been thinking about that brownie like the whole time.
You'd be fixated on that for about the past hour.
You're like, I wonder how many chocolate chips are in it.
Jenny, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much. Thanks for giving us the whistle stop tour through,
I can't wait.
through your life in your work.
Thank you.
And needless to say, your book, Climate Cancel Culture, is out now, right? You can just go on Amazon and click a button and it will turn up.
Yeah, it's Cancel Culture and Climate by Jenny Morgan, and you can get it from some small bookstores in the Pacific Northwest. They'll also ship internationally, and then it's also available on Amazon.
Excellent.
So, lots of areas to get it.
Just offset your shipping.
Yeah.
Of course. Always.